Welcome to Below the Line, where we talk about working in Hollywood from the crew perspective. My name is Skid. I'm a former assistant director and your host.
Quiet on the set.
Today we're talking about The Boroughs, the 8-episode television series currently airing on Netflix. And my guest is screenwriter Yona Speidel. Welcome to Below the Line.
Thanks for having me. How are you doing?
Very good, very good. I'm excited about this. A warning for listeners, today's conversation will contain spoilers. You've had time to go watch the show. If you've got to catch up, we will be talking about all 8 episodes. But to start us off, Yona, talk to me about how you got involved in The Boroughs and your background in screenwriting.
My first show that I wrote on was Transparent, and that was in 2014. I was on there for 4 seasons under the name Our Lady J, which was a stage name I had adopted as a downtown New York City performer. I lovingly call myself a former showgirl. And so this is actually my first screen credit as Yona Speidel. After Transparent, I went on to write and produce Pose. And then from Pose, I went to American Horror Story, which I also directed. And then I've done a few other shows. This was my 15th Writer's Room season, I believe. So it feels good to drop the showgirl finally. I think I'm really into TV now, and I don't plan on getting back to the stage anytime soon. So that's the name change.
Tell me how that works for a screenwriter to join a writer's room. The show is created by Jeffrey Addiss and Will Matthews. Are they interviewing folks? Is there another team that's bringing people in? I'm just curious how a writing room in a current television show comes together.
Well, one of our executive producers, Hillary Levitt, I had worked with on a pilot that I sold to Hulu, and we developed that. It was one of those projects that got caught up in the musical chairs of executives changing. And however, the best part of that project was meeting Hillary and becoming close with her and just learning from her as an executive producer. She's really a baller, and she was my connection to Will and Jeff. So when I met Will and Jeff, I had a familiarity with the project, and at the interview, I just immediately fell in love with them and saw that why she was such a good match for the two of them as well.
Let's go deeper into that writing room. Tell me how this one was structured. How many folks were there? What did you start with? Just, again, modern shows with their short runs are structured a lot differently than more traditional 22 seasonal television. And so I'm curious how it worked on The Boroughs specifically.
Well, there were 8 writers. Will and Jeff were EPs. Then there were 3 co-EPs. I believe 2 story editors, a producer, and a showrunner. Is the mathing up?
We're not gonna check any math on this. This is a math-free zone. But no, I think you're close.
Did I say showrunner? I meant to say staff writer at the end. So Will and Jeff co-show ran the show.
You specifically wrote episode 7. We're going to do a deep dive on that. But I'm guessing that it wasn't like everyone was just assigned an episode, like, I don't know, some game of telephone. You guys were, or what is it telephone where you kind of pass it along, right? Anyway, I'm not probably thinking of the right metaphor there. But talking about what they started with and then what you guys came up as far as these 8 episodes, how they're going to be structured, when you're going to hit your points.
I've been in rooms like that where you write an episode, then you pass it around, and everyone kind of has a specialty, a special voice that they contribute. And I've also been in rooms where you just write all the episodes together, and then it's kind of a crapshoot as to who gets the credit. For this room, we broke all the story together as a group. We went in day 1. Will and Jeff had written the pilot and a light season Bible. And then from there, we took it and we listened to what their hopes and dreams for the series would be and started contributing our own stories and our own experience to the show. And once we had all 8 episodes broken, then one writer at a time would peel off and write an outline. And as they were outlining, we would go to the next episode and kind of tighten that up to prepare that for an outline. And then once the Hillary's notes came in, and then the Duffer Brothers notes, and then Netflix notes. Then we would go
a lot of notes. That's a whole other part of the
3 rounds. But luckily, I mean, everyone was such great producers on this show. So the notes always felt in line with what our intentions were. I mean, Will and Jeff will speak better to that than me, but from what I witnessed, there's no tension. Sometimes there's notes that like, oh, we weren't clear about what we were trying to say, and maybe we need to be clearer. But it felt we were all on the same page from day one. So then the notes for the outline would get approved, and then the writer would go off and have, I think, 10 days to write the episode. And then they would come back and we would catch them up on all the fun we had. There's always like a FOMO for this writer's room. When we would leave, it's like, what I miss, guys? What jokes did I miss? What lunches did I miss?
Now, talk to me about how this. So this is all taking place before production begins. Is that correct? Or are you having some back and forth with filming on set?
This was all before production. So we had all 8 episodes ready to go before we even went into pre-production. So that gave Jeff and Will some time to do their magic in pre-production with all the producers and the great magicians behind the scenes.
Now, what about casting? Do you know who's going to play these characters before? In other words, are you writing to certain actors, or is that also a post-writing exercise in finding the people?
It's a combination, really, because we weren't able to have any of the conversations with actors until well into writing. There definitely were actors we had in mind, and there were also actors who the characters would change, and then we would have an idea for an actor, for like a different actor, and like, oh, that suits that character better. So it was an ever-evolving process up until casting was finalized. But definitely there was, our core group of actors were our dream.
Well, let's turn our attention to your specific episode. As I mentioned in the beginning, you wrote episode 7. To me, that seems there's a challenge here where you're culminating everything that's happened over the first 6 episodes and you're setting up for the finale. Talk to me about your approach to what you were assigned and what you saw as the challenges here. If not that, then others.
Episode 7 became known as the Heist episode. There's always, for this show, everything is so interconnected from episode to episode. There are cards being revealed, being flipped, new things coming up that we all had planned for. So sometimes the challenge of writing a later episode would be that something in an earlier episode changes, and then that changes the later episode. So as you go through and you finesse those outlines and the scripts, a new idea pops up, and you're like, well, there goes that plot line in my episode. And so then by the time you get to it, sometimes it's a completely different episode. But episode 7, being a heist episode, kind of stood on its own. We always knew that Sam was going to be locked in the memory ward for people with Alzheimer's and dementia.
What's known as the Manor on the show.
Manor, right? Yeah. Thank you. You might know the show better than I do at this point.
I might have watched it more recently.
So the Manor, we knew he was going to get in there and he had to get out. There were some other things that were happening outside the Manor that changed. But I had just written a heist movie with 20th Century that is still in development. And so it felt like a natural fit for me to take the heist episode.
Now, talking about a heist, that's an interesting challenge in that if they haven't done any production or the sets, there's lots of things that come up in actual filming that might affect how things are structured. Or were you able to write it in a way that they were building to your specifications?
Well, Will and Jeff had visited a few retirement villages before, and the Manor is based on one of the places that they visited. The yarn and the coffee was a very specific image that they had. And it was very touching to see the level of care that seniors get at these retirement villages. But however, we are a horror monster show. So we had to wipe away that level of care and make it a little more sinister. So the idea that there was this separate community was from real life, but then a community within the community. But not knowing what the sets were going to look like, if we were going to be shooting somewhere on location or if we were going to be building a set, was a big challenge. So we had all these little maps. I don't know if you've ever been to a writer's room and seen on the boards, there's just like all these chicken scratch drawings.
I've seen a lot of writers' rooms on television when they're dramatized, but I don't know how accurate that is for what's actually happening in the room.
It often looks like a murder board, or you're just like connecting the dots and trying to figure out what's what. But we had a few sketches that kept changing depending on what we needed out of the plot. And eventually we settled on that there would be this barricade. There would be like the inner area where the patients walk free, and then surrounding that there would be like the offices and the doctor's offices, and where the evil folks from the Boroughs are doing their bad things. I guess we can give spoiler alerts.
Yes. Oh no, we warned everybody. You can do the spoils because they need to have seen it to really, really savor this podcast. They need to have seen the show.
So that's where they're doing their draining and all of that. And then outside there is the Boroughs itself, the happy village where everybody's living. So we ended up building sets for that. And the plot was very much informed. What I was writing was informed by the little chicken scratch drawings that we had done.
Now, we're talking about the physical structure that they're moving around through the heist. And then you also have, I'm thinking of the writing structure where you have the really two plans happening at once. It's what Sam's trying to do to get himself out. And then you also have the team that's trying to rescue him. Talk to me a little about, from a screenwriting perspective, how these are structured in your mind, or what may have been different from what you planned to where it ended up.
I think the key to keeping an audience hooked is to always pivot. The character wants one thing and the character's going to get something else. I know that the South Park guys call that but, like, yes, but. You get to what the character wants to do, and then you say, but this happens. So they start here, but then we move over here. So the idea of there being two different heists happening at the same time, Sam is trying to break out while his friends are trying to break in. And of course, he breaks out and misses them. And then they have to figure out how to break out because they get stuck. So it's just a matter of like adding obstacle after obstacle to build that tension for the final release of victory.
And there's also an opportunity in this episode, again, not just an opportunity, but a necessity to bring everyone together to set up for the finale. So we have Claire, his daughter, finally gets on board. We have the outside team. We have Wally, the doctor, inside. Bringing all of these folks, at least their intentions together in this episode. I don't know. That feels like a pretty heavy lift for an episode, and I'm curious whether you saw that as a challenge or a welcome opportunity as a writer.
It definitely was a challenge, and especially when you hear that, like a show like The Boroughs, we're very Amblin, like the idea of, we all grew up on these 80s movies of The Goonies and Cocoon and E.T., and so it is part of the format that, like, you're going to have a happy ending, although it's going to be complicated. So you're going to get your heartwarming moment. And having that come off as anything but schmaltzy and cheesy is very, very difficult as a writer. So it's a matter of grounding the characters and grounding the plot in reality. For example, when Gina and Alfre are in chasing Sam, and there's the wheelchair, and one of them has to get in the wheelchair, and they argue a bit about who's gonna do this. It's just like, as they go along, keeping the things real is what keeps it from being schmaltzy. But that was my first reaction, is like, oh, how am I gonna make this not just like a cheese fest when they all unite and succeed? So that definitely was a challenge, in finding the little details along the way that can kind of pull the characters into a place that will allow the audience to relate, rather than saying, oh, that's ridiculous, that would never happen.
I want to contrast your writing of the team coming together with the cold open to the episode, which is the Shaws, Blaine and Annalise. They're having a moment of their own where they're really being quite villainous. And I mean, it's I wouldn't say it's a reveal at this point, because it's, we kind of know where they're coming from, but just the two of them alone, that it's before the credits. that scene's got to accomplish something different. And I'm curious again how that was presented to you and what you came up with.
Well, there's this thing called ordering the beats in the writer's room, where each character gets their storyline. In an episode like 7, where they're all together, it's more compacted. And earlier in the season, you'll be following Wally, Renee, Art, Paz. You'll be following all these different storylines. And then when they come together, then you order them and you see like what's going to happen first. Whose storyline are we going to serve at this moment? The end of Act 1 break, like who's going to get that moment? So all that happens. So in my episode, the opening was really determined about like, how are we tracking the bad guys as our good guys are facing this huge challenge? And it felt natural to show how sinister this couple is, but also the challenges that our villains are facing as well. It's heartbreaking when she sees that the goo's not working anymore. And there's this real tender moment that they really do love each other, even though they are completely evil and must be destroyed.
We're not losing a lot of tears over their eventual fate on that, but that doesn't come down in your episode, so we won't spend a lot of time on it. But what you did have in your episode, which I almost never see on TV anymore, is smoking. Talk to me about those scenes and how they made their way into the script.
There was actually no smoking. There were cigarettes, but there was no smoking.
Good point. Yes. Yes, there's cigarettes. That's right. They're chasing cigarettes, but they don't actually end up lighting them, do they?
Exactly. And I that was a choice that was made after the writer's room wrapped. So
indeed.
I wasn't in that conversation. So I won't speak on that. However, I have 2 women in my family. Aunt Zoe and her friend Marge were my grandmother's sisters. So my great aunt, they must have been born in the 30s. They were my grandmother's older sister. And I just knew Aunt Zoe and her friend Marge as these like chain smoking, fabulous women who would come to the family picnics. And then when I was older, I learned that Marge wasn't just her friend, but Marge was her partner. And my aunt was gay. And so it was this sweet nod to kind of like queer pioneers in a way. I'm from a very, very small rural area in Pennsylvania. And, my grandfather never touched a cigarette in his life, never drank, was very zipped up. But when Zoe and Marge went into the nursing home, they would guilt him into sneaking cigarettes and beer in for them. And he would, because he loved them, family's family. So that storyline of sneaking a cigarette kind of initially came from the story of my great aunt Zoe and her friend Marge. Then I was writing a cabaret show like in Paris. I was pitching a cabaret show in Paris in the 1950s. And I had an exec tell me that they wouldn't allow any smoking. And it's cabaret in France. It's the 1950s. Like, what else is there if their characters aren't chain smoking? And then I learned about, cigarettes and television. Cigarettes are terrible, for the record. Like, they're really not good for you. I quit smoking, so I'm not going to say that they're this amazing thing. But you tell a writer that they can't do something, and then suddenly that's all the writer wants to do. So I thought, how can I get cigarettes onto this show? Then I found out if cigarettes are key to the plot, they can be on a show. So cigarettes becoming key to the plot of the heist was just me being a rebel and trying to get a cigarette onto the show.
Now, in those 3 rounds of notes, though, certainly someone came back and suggested that it be gummy bears or something. Like, somebody must have pushed back on the cigarettes. Even with the story you told, someone might have said, "Yeah, but."
I think there was always the option of like, we got to flag this in case we change it. But I think because it just works so naturally, and it is so period of people of that generation, they were heavy smokers. And the character that Mary McDonnell plays, the Duchess, she comes alive because of a cigarette. Like, that's her trigger. And so when I was a kid, I played piano in nursing homes. It was just like something that my parents encouraged me to do out of charity. I was a pianist from a very young age. So I would go into the nursing home and I would play the piano at like age 9 and 10. And out of that, the residents would come alive when I would play older songs, like Battle Hymn of the Republic or like older hymns or something. They would come alive. And I thought, it's kind of magical that our senses allow us to awaken at this time. So for someone who might have been a heavy smoker, that made sense to all of the execs. I think it made sense to everyone that it was this kind of like charming thing, that something is so out of reach. It would be hard for Sam to get a cigarette in a nursing home. So the challenge met the plot and the intention, and it all just worked out.
When you talked about playing the piano in nursing homes, it reminds me of the karaoke session, which is also a key part of your episode, and this Bruce Springsteen song that is actually part of the plot. Talk to me about the approach to the song, what was written, and then what ended up on screen.
Well, that was a heavily contested area of the writer's room where we debated endlessly. And it changed week to week, actually. It went from Bruce to Joni Mitchell to, I mean, it was all over the map of what songs would Sam love and what would that song with Sam and Lily be, Sam's deceased wife. So the final decision was made after the writer's room wrapped. So I don't know all the nitty gritty. I'm sure it wasn't easy. It was challenging in the writer's room. We had an incredible music supervisor, Nora Felder. Music is such a big part of the Boroughs. John Passano is just this incredible composer who brought so much life. When I first watched a cut of the episode with Will and Jeff, I turned to them. I was like, is this music for real? Like, how did we get this? We were very, very lucky to have a strong music department. And all the writers, we loved music. So I know Will and Jeff are huge spiritually music lovers as well. So it all came from that. Now the nitty-gritty details, I have no idea how they got it. But I do know that it's the first time it's been leased out for a TV show. Perhaps a movie.
Wow.
So thank you, Bruce. We love you. We love you. You are a top choice.
And that's interesting from a writer's perspective. And maybe I'm speaking maybe it's more of a general question, but there's a lot you have to give up. You can't really know, unless you are executive producing and carrying the show from beginning to end, writing some of this, sets, all of these things. Or do you try to overwrite it in a way that pushes some of those issues? Or is there a back and forth between those feelings? How do you manage that?
It's a real bad idea to push issues when you're not the creator of the show, because you're servicing someone else's work. And the intention from the beginning is to look at what the creators want and then make that happen. You bring your experience to the show, and if there's something that is really maybe a blind spot, you have to push back. So it's really a fine line of how do I serve what the creators want while also bringing my own experience and my own abilities to the show. And if you've ever been on a set, which I think a lot of your listeners have been, that's the rule of the set. You're there to serve the vision of the director. So it's the same in a writer's room.
There was another couple of key moments in this episode that I was curious to hear your take. And that's a couple of our characters have changes of heart. Claire, Sam's daughter, sees that the TVs were for real, and she comes onto the team. And then Wally also has a change of heart concerning his relationship with Mother, but it's a bit more of an internal process for him. It's not in his words the same way that Claire's change is. And I'm curious, again, as the writer, what you're trying to signify with both of their storylines. Are they meant to be parallel, or you're just trying to get both of them to point B from where they start?
They both have a season arc that is more emotional, I think, and also isolated in their own experience. All the characters have their isolated emotional experiences, but because of physically, they are not part of this heist. in this episode, they are emotionally isolated from the other characters. So we get to follow what they may be feeling. So that was intentional, but also the episode 7 of it, everyone's having revelations. It's the penultimate episode, so you gotta pay off all the story that you've been developing up until then. Wally was tempted. Dennis is just so amazing. I worked with him on American Horror Story, and the moment I brought up his name in the writer's room, everyone was like, "Ah, yes, we love." And for good reason. You watch, I think it's in the previous episode. Is it episode 6 where he goes to the dark side? Or is that 5?
Yes. He spends 7, I think, discovering a possible cure, but then, deciding how involved he's gonna be with that by the end.
You really feel for him, and there was a fine line when writing that episode. We didn't want him to be evil, but we wanted him to have a very real draw to why this might be tempting for him, and him losing everyone. What does it look like for a gay man in a retirement village right now? A man who lost all of his friends and lost partners and great loves. So there is this emotional isolation that we track from the very beginning of the season, the way that he appears by himself going to Jack's house in episode 1, and he meets Sam outside. So that was always baked in to the series. And then why that happened, making that more emotional and more heartfelt, we developed to then finally getting to this point of realizing that his friends right now, the people who are in his life right now, are what matter most. And yes, he has trauma and he has grief that still lives with him from his experiences in life, but no day but today, you gotta help the people that are around you. But with Claire, her draw, so Jeff's grandfather was an engineer, and I know Sam was kind of like an ode to his grandfather. That's how Sam was an engineer, and my father was also an engineer. So Claire being an engineer, that wasn't as natural. That didn't come right away, and we eventually settled on that because we wanted to show a bond that was real between them, that maybe had been broken over time, or there was an emotional distance and something to come back together. So her taking apart the TVs and fixing kind of what her dad was in the middle of shows that they really are on the same page, even though they're not processing the grief of Lily the same. And there was actually this monologue that I wrote that ended up getting cut. It was heartbreaking. It got cut because it was about my dad. My dad taught me to take apart things, to not be afraid to take apart, a radio or a remote control or whatever, to like completely take it apart and then put it back together. And I still do that all the time. I mean, I'm always taking shit apart, but it's kind of a metaphor for life. It's like, don't be afraid to break things. Engineers are not afraid to break things, if you know any engineers. So that was kind of the emotional moment in that moment where her dad had taught her to take TVs apart and fix things. And that's how she became an engineer. In that moment, she's trying to get close to him. She's trying to understand him. She's trying to believe him. And then finally she sees, actually, yeah, my dad was telling the truth when she sees the monster revealed.
You talked about writing a monologue that doesn't make it into the final show or the episode. Are there other aspects when you watch this episode for the first time? Are there other things that you were missing from your script or that were added that were a surprise to you? Talk to me just about, again, having to step away, but then coming back and seeing the final product, what that triggers for you.
I've learned to not hold tightly onto things and to see it all as a process. So you do contribute these things that have a lot of emotional weight. But if you're too attached for it, you're not going to make the best thing that you could make, because you're going to get stuck in ego and all of that stuff that as artists we every day try to remove ourselves from. I think the thing that was hard about that was I told my dad about that monologue. So it was more about like, oh no, my dad's not going to see that. I got to send him the pages and show him what I wrote to make up for it. So I feel like I never take it personally when something gets cut. Being a director as well, I really understand. I think it's really hard for actors who sometimes, an entire actor will get cut from an episode if one plot line doesn't work out. I've seen that happen, and that's really hard. As a writer, though, I feel so lucky that I have anything to write and to contribute in the first place. So the things that go, c'est la vie.
An actor getting cut out reminds me of a story that happened to me in brief. I had a friend visit me on the set of West Wing when I was doing background, and I put him in with my regular background, and they got him featured, and it was all very good. He lived in New York. At the time, we were filming and they were airing at the same time in West Wing, one of those long season shows. So he told everyone that he was going to be in the episode, and it aired in New York before I had seen the episode at our lunch break, and they dropped that entire storyline. And it wasn't like they were going to use those scenes somewhere else. That it got written into the next episode, but obviously he wasn't visiting for that one. So it was I certainly embarrassed him as well. Peter, you get my apologies every time I think of it. So, but coming back to the Boroughs, talk to me about season 2. What are the hopes for more Boroughs?
I mean, we're on a writers group thread right now, and writers are such a distinct and interesting species in that we are very earnest and also self-deprecating at the same time. So we were nervous about how it was going to be received. And when we started getting good reviews, the text thread was just like, you could feel the relief on the text thread of like, oh my goodness, fine. Yes, we did it. Okay. That's very exciting. And so we've been celebrating, but also, we really want to do 10 more seasons. I texted that the other day and Will said, I'm going to be so exhausted. 10 seasons. I don't know about that. So definitely we're hoping for season 2. We got to wait to see how the metrics are performing. So if you haven't watched The Boroughs, please check it out. All 10 episodes, watch it twice, 3 times. Why not?
Let it run in the background. I got to play it in the other room. Just let it run.
Yeah.
Push those Netflix numbers. Well, hopeful on that. In the meantime, what is next for you?
I am currently working on a musical. I'm in that place where I don't want to really reveal too much because how everything changes, what we're just talking about. I don't want to give too much away, but it's kind of the love of my life right now. So I will see this musical through if it kills me. So I know it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when it's going to happen. I was a composer before I was a screenwriter. And that's how I got into screenwriting was through lyrics and writing shows and dialogue in between the music. I eventually just dropped the music and kept the dialogue. So I'm returning to my passion of musicals, and that's why I'm in New York right now. I just see as much theater as I can, and I'm just really immersed in that world.
Well, Yona, good luck with that. We will watch for that. Wishing you every success. On that note, we're going to call it a wrap. It was great having you here.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure.
Listeners and viewers both, however you're joining us, I always appreciate your feedback. My email address is skid@belowtheline, oneword.biz. That's B-I-Z. Closing credits, thanks to Curtis Five for our music and John Wan for our logo. The logo is available on t-shirts, mugs, and stickers at redbubble.com. If you've enjoyed the show, please give us a positive rating and tell your friends. That's how we get new viewers and new listeners. Thanks again from Below the Line. Yona, that was great.
Thanks so much. What a pleasure. It's so nice to be able to talk like a writer and to know that, you get it and your audience is going to get it.
I think they will. As little experience as I bring to writing, obviously it's outside of my production below the line experience. I am really fascinated about it, and you really, really answered all my questions. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I mean, you've seen enough drafts come through. Come on, you know.
Yeah, New pages. Oh yeah, the rainbow.
You know what double cherry means.
I'm familiar with the challenges faced by writers, but I think it's fair to say that you don't necessarily appreciate them on the same level, but you really opened up the doors on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, as a director, an AD is a director's best friend, so I admire and appreciate everything you do.
We appreciate having that.